Okay, so we're going to start by cutting out the pieces. We've got 2 pieces of the outer fabric, 2 pieces of lining fabric, and also 2 pieces of wadding, and these are the size of the total pattern piece, so cut these out in those semicircles. You then need to trace the applique pieces, so I've labelled them 1, 2 and 3. So get your bonder web with the glue side down, smooth side up, and trace around the first curve of the applique piece and the semicircle. Then the second piece, get your bonder web. Again, you're tracing on the paper side of the bonder web. And you're going to be tracing the second dotted curve. And this is giving you the second piece. And then you're going to do the same for the third piece. Okay, so trace around all 3 pieces and just roughly cut around the edge, leaving about 1 centimetre or so allowance. Okay, then we're going to choose the fabrics that you want each applique piece to be, and we're going to be ironing the applique piece to the bonder web to the back of the fabric. So the piece that you've just cut out, you're going to get the glue side, and that's the rough side. You can feel it by rubbing your finger on. Put it to the back of the fabric, get a hot iron and press it in place. Do that for all 3 pieces. And then once you've attached them to the back of the fabric, so you would have decided which one's your favourite and how you want to lay it out, you're then going to cut the pieces out in accordance to the lines that you drew a little bit earlier. So you're going to do this for all 3 pieces so that you've then got 3 applique pieces that we're then going to attach to the front of the outer bag piece, so one of your main pieces. Just wait for me to finish cutting out here. Okay, so once you've done that, do the same for all 3 applique pieces, and then we're going to grab the outer piece of fabric, and we're going to start by, first of all, you're going to attach the fusible fleece to both sides of the outer. And then once you've done the fusible fleece, get the first applique piece and take off the backing paper. I usually just rip it a little bit and it just lifts once you've ripped the paper. And then you're left with the glue, so it should feel a bit rubbery. That's the glue that's been left on the fabric. Align it in place, so just spend some time deciding how you want it aligned. And then you're going to use a hot iron. I usually use a little bit of steam as well. Sometimes it just helps the adhesive stick. Once you've done that, you're going to stitch it in place. And you can use a decorative stitch along that curve. I like using a blanket stitch when I do applique, but it's up to you. You can be creative. Get your second piece. Again, take off the backing paper. So you can see I just did that little rip. And once that is taken off, again, just decide how it's going to be laid out. You can always adjust it when you get to the ironing board. Then you're going to take it to the ironing board, and again, as you can see, I have adjusted my layout. There you go, there it is. And I've sewn across the wiggly line, so I've attached that in place with a applique stitch. There we go, and then I'm just attaching my last piece. Again, I'm going to use a hot iron to attach that in place, and I'm going to sew along the last wiggly line. Okay, moving on to the pocket. Attach your interfacing to the back of the pocket pieces, and then you're going to cut the length of tape, thread it through the clip, and align it to the edge of the right side of a pocket piece. You're going to sandwich that inside the other side of the pocket piece, and you're going to sew all the way around the edge, leaving a gap at the bottom, about 1.5 inches to turn it. So sew that in place. Once you've done that, clip the corners, trim any seam allowances, and turn it the right way out. more fingers and thumbs here. If you've got a turning tool, you can use that. A knitting needle or a chopstick is usually quite helpful, but by clipping the corners, you're going to help your corners look nice and sharp once you've turned it through. And then once you've done it, you can give it a good press with the iron. Once you've done that, we're going to attach the pocket to one of the lining pieces. So position it in place 4 centimetres from the top of the top edge, and you're then going to sew that in place, just down one side across the bottom and up the other side, making sure you back stitch. Okay, grab your zip end pieces of fabric, fold them in half so that the right side is facing out, and you're going to attach them with a single line of stitching across the end of each zip. So just finger press it, fold it with finger pressing, and pop one piece towards one end of the zip, making sure the folded edge is facing towards the zip pull. Remember, this is an invisible zip. We're treating it as a normal zip, but just so you can remember, the teeth are on the wrong side of the zip and the smooth side of the zip is facing up. So that's the correct side of your zip. So you attach those with a row of stitching. Once you've done that, you just want your zip open a little bit, and we're going to start by attaching one side of your zip to one side of your outer bag, and we're going to line up the raw edge of the zip with the top raw edge of the outer bag. We're going to layer a lining piece on top. Again, this is the lining piece without the pocket. We're going to align the raw edges, and it's right sides together. So you're going to line the lining piece right sides together with the outer piece, aligning the raw edges, and we're going to sew that in place. And the row of stitching will run between halfway of the edge of the fabric and the teeth of the zip. So start with a back stitch, making sure all of those edges are aligned, all those raw edges, and using a zipper foot. And remember, you don't need an invisible zip foot, just treat the zip as a normal zip. You can stitch all the way along the edge of the zip. When you get to the zip pull, with your with your needle in the down position, just lift up your presser foot and you can wiggle with your hand that zip out of the way. So all I'm doing here, I've got my finger underneath, I've just grabbed the zip pull and I'm just pulling the zip out the way. Now I've done that, I can put my presser foot back down and continue sewing. So I've just sewn around the zip pull without any wiggly lines because I've just stopped with the needle in the down position and wiggled it out of the way. So I'm going to sew all the way to the end of the zip here, end with a back stitch, and I've sewn one half of the zip. It's sandwiched in between the outer fabric and the lining fabric. Okay, so as you can see, that's one half of the zip sandwiched. There's my right side of the zip, the nice smooth side. I'm now going to attach the second side of the zip to the fabric. So I've got the other main piece. I'm now going to get the right side of the zip, which remember is the smooth side, so there's no teeth with these zips. I'm going to align it raw edges to raw edges of the outer bag. Okay, and at this point the right side of the lining is facing up. With then, once I've decided that that is lovely and aligned in place, and don't worry too much if you've got any bits of zip hanging off, you can trim this off at a later date. Okay, so I am fiddling about here. So I've aligned my zip edge, the final zip edge, with the main fabric. I'm now going to get my lining piece, the one with the pocket, and that is going to be positioned right sides facing. So I now have the two lining pieces right sides together. All of that's getting sandwiched in between, well, that zip is getting sandwiched in between all these layers. So I've got the outer and the lining fabric all facing each other, and I'm now going to clip these in place. You can of course use pins if you haven't got any clips. but just making sure they're all nice and neatly aligned. Oh yeah, just open that zip a little bit so you can turn at a later stage. So remember to keep your zip open, and make sure, just spend some time aligning all of those raw edges so everything is nice and neatly positioned, ready for sewing. Okay, nearly there, but just take your time, there's no hurry. As before, sew along that line in between the edge of the fabric and halfway between the edge of the zip. Then, once you've finished sewing your zip in place, you can see you've got the outer pieces now facing each other and the lining pieces now facing each other. So we're going to sew this in place. So we've nearly completed our bag. I'm going to clip the outer fabric pieces together so they lie nice and flat. They're the ones with the fusible fleece attached. I'm just going to make sure that little loop is tucked away, and I'm then going to attach with pins, well I'm using clips but you can use pins, the two lining sides together. These are now right sides together, and you've got to remember here to leave a gap for turning. So there you go, that's a little gap you want to leave, just probably 2.5 inches. You're going to sew it up at a later time, but it's worth leaving more space just so it doesn't get too fiddly. I'm just chopping off the end of the zip there that's hanging over. And you're going to sew that in place using a 1 centimetre seam allowance. If you've got pinking shears, trim the seam allowance with those. If you haven't, then just cut some little triangles into the curves. This helps the edges lay flat. Once you've done that, you can turn it the right way. So you're going to turn everything through the hole in the lining that you left. So you might need to be a bit forceful because the fusible fleece can be a little bit stiff, but get it all pushed through, and then your lining is going to eventually push in to the main part of the bag. It's like magic, it all comes together. So there you go. See, I'm opening up the zip. There's my main bit of the bag. I'm now turning it inside out. So my lining is now sitting inside the main part of the bag. My outer fabric is being turned so it's on the outside. And I'm just neatening it up, pushing out all the curves. You can spend some time doing this. Make sure you give it all a good press when you're finished. You're going to want to push out the corners of the zip. So just give everything a good poke out. It might take a little bit of time to push out those corners, but once you've done it, you will just need to sew up the hole in the lining. You can do this by hand or on your machine. Give it all a good press, and ta-da, you have completed your very cute applique purse. So I'm still pushing out my corners, they really are stuck, but there you go. There's the finished applique pouch, which I think I used sewing fabric that I had left over, but as you can see, it's rather gorgeous. Good luck guys, I hope you enjoyed the project.